Somewhere in the ruins of a city that used to have a heartbeat, a man is looking through a scope. It is the last hour of darkness, October 16th, 2017. He has been waiting for this exact moment for 5 months. Through the green haze of a night vision sight, a figure moves across broken concrete. The sniper does not know this man's name yet. He only knows what he was told, that the man in his crosshairs has a $5 million price on his head. And somewhere else in the same ruined city, at almost the exact same moment, a second sniper is watching a second man. Neither target knows what's coming. In less than a minute, a war that started with a hostage rescue will end with 2 pulled triggers.
To understand what's about to happen in that scope, you need to understand what it's ending. 5 months of urban warfare. Not skirmishes, full-scale combat, street by street, house by house, through a city that had never seen anything like it. More than 1,000 people dead by the time this night arrives. Over 800 militants, 162 Filipino soldiers and police, 47 civilians who never chose to be part of any of this. An entire city, 250 hectares of it, reduced to what military reports simply called Ground Zero. This didn't happen overnight. It happened because 5 months earlier, one operation went catastrophically differently than anyone expected.
Rewind to May 23, 2017. It was supposed to be a straightforward operation. Philippine soldiers and police moving through the city of Marawi, acting on intelligence about a wanted man hiding somewhere inside it. The plan was simple: locate him, capture him, go home. Instead, government forces stumbled directly into something far bigger than one man. Armed militants, dozens of them, then hundreds, emerged from buildings across the city almost simultaneously. Within hours, gunmen occupied bridges, mosques, government buildings, entire neighborhoods. What was meant to be a single arrest had triggered the opening hours of the largest urban battle in modern Philippine history. The man they had come for was Isnilon Hapilon. By 2017, he wasn't just a wanted fugitive. He was something far more dangerous. Self-declared emir, supreme commander of Islamic State forces across all of Southeast Asia. The FBI had placed him on their most wanted terrorists list back in 2006. 11 years of hunting him. The United States government had a $5 million bounty on his capture. The Philippine government added $200,000 more. By the time the siege began, Hapilon was already believed to be wounded, hiding somewhere inside Marawi, surrounded by men willing to die protecting him. Beside him, a second name that would define this siege: Omar Maute. Along with his brother Abdallah, Omar had built something Hapilon never had on his own: a local power base, the Maute Group. Filipino fighters, deeply rooted in the region, who'd pledged their allegiance to the Islamic State and dreamed of something specific. Not just an attack, a declaration. They wanted to raise the black flag of ISIS over the provincial capital and announce a new territory of the caliphate, a wilayat, right here in the southern Philippines.
The city they chose was not random. Marawi, the only place in the entire Philippines officially designated an Islamic city. For the ideology Hapilon and the Mautes were selling, there was no more symbolically valuable target in the country. If they could hold Marawi, even for a matter of weeks, it would prove something to every extremist movement watching from across the region. That the Islamic State didn't just exist in Iraq and Syria. It could take and hold ground in Southeast Asia too. That single ambition about to cost the city everything it had.
What followed was not fast. Weeks became a month became 3. Government forces, unable to dislodge entrenched fighters through ground assault alone, turned to something more devastating: aerial bombing. Airstrikes tore through neighborhoods where militants were dug in, and through neighborhoods where civilians were still trapped. Hundreds of thousands of residents fled the city entirely. Those who couldn't leave hid in basements, in mosques, in whatever concrete still had a roof. By the time this night, October 16th, finally arrived, Marawi barely resembled the city it had been in April.
The men hunting Hapilon and Maute through those ruins were not ordinary infantry. The 8th Scout Ranger Company, part of the same elite lineage, the Musangs, trained for exactly this kind of fight. Urban terrain, close quarters, impossible precision under pressure. Where conventional forces struggled to clear buildings one room at a time, Scout Ranger sharpshooters worked differently. Patient, positioned, willing to wait hours, sometimes days, for a single clean opportunity. By mid-October, they had narrowed the hunt for the 2 most wanted men in the Philippines down to a matter of city blocks.
What finally broke the siege open didn't come from a drone, or a satellite, or months of surveillance. It came from a woman, one of the hostages the militants had been holding somewhere inside their stronghold. At some point in mid-October, she found a way out. She escaped, alone, through a battlefield, carrying something more valuable than anything the military had gathered in 5 months. She knew exactly where Hapilon and Maute were hiding. She told them everything. Within hours, Scout Ranger units were moving into position around 2 specific locations.
Before that final night, Hapilon and Maute had already made their intentions clear. Through the same hostage who would later escape, they had sent a message, almost a warning, to anyone still listening. "We will not surrender," they said. "We will die fighting." It wasn't a bluff. 5 months of watching their fighters die around them, refusing every offer to leave, had already proven that much. So when Scout Ranger units closed in on their final positions, in the hour before dawn on October 16th, nobody expected them to walk out alive. Nobody expected them to try.
This is where we return to that scope, to that last hour of darkness. 2 Scout Ranger snipers, positioned at separate locations across the ruined city, each watching a man they had been told carried a bounty worth more than most soldiers make in a lifetime. Night vision sights, long-range rifles, no margin for a second shot, radios silent, breathing controlled. Whatever happened in the next 60 seconds would either end a 5-month war or hand the 2 most wanted men in the Philippines one more night to disappear into the ruins.
The first shot found Omar Maute. A single round. It ended instantly. At a separate position across the ruins, almost the same moment, the second sniper found Isnilon Hapilon. Multiple rounds to the chest. He did not survive them. 2 shots. 2 men who had, between them, led one of the most devastating urban sieges in modern Southeast Asian history, both dead within moments of each other, at separate locations, neither man aware the other had already fallen. 5 months of war, ended, functionally, in less time than it takes to read this sentence out loud.
What happened in the hours immediately after moved fast. Soldiers recovered both bodies from the battlefield. 17 hostages, people who had been held for weeks, some for months, were rescued in the same operation. Word reached military command almost immediately. Then it reached the palace. Then, within hours, it reached the entire country. The two men whose names had defined 5 months of fear, destruction, and uncertainty were no longer a threat to anyone. The next day, October 17th, President Rodrigo Duterte flew directly to Marawi. He stood before a crowd in a city that was still smoking in places and made it official. Marawi, he said, was liberated from the terrorist influence that had gripped it. The words were simple. The moment was not. Behind him stood a city that would take years, not days, to rebuild. But the war that had defined it for 5 months was, for the first time, genuinely over. There was still one final confirmation left. Rumors move fast in war. Officials wanted certainty. On October 21st, 5 days after the shots were fired, the FBI's legal attaché in Manila confirmed it. DNA testing on the recovered remains matched Isnilon Hapilon exactly. 11 years on America's most wanted terrorists list. 11 years of a $5 million bounty going unclaimed. Confirmed scientifically beyond dispute in a laboratory thousands of miles from the rooftop where it actually ended. Here's what the victory doesn't fully capture. More than 1,000 people never went home. Over 800 militants. 162 Filipino soldiers and police officers who put on a uniform that morning in May and never took it off again. 47 civilians who had no part in any of this. One young woman from Marawi, interviewed months later, said something that has stayed with people ever since. That every photograph from the siege broke her heart a little more, because the Marawi in those photographs wasn't the Marawi she grew up in anymore. Here's what deserves to be said plainly. 2 snipers, 2 shots essentially, ended what 5 months of full military mobilization, airstrikes, artillery, and thousands of troops could not fully finish on their own. The same training that builds a scout ranger capable of surviving a 100-to-1 jungle ambush is the training that produces a sniper capable of taking a single, silent, decisive shot after 5 months of waiting for exactly 1 chance. Different battlefield, same discipline, same result. There's a bigger picture worth understanding here. Hapilon and the Maute brothers weren't just trying to hold one city, they were trying to prove something to the entire region, that the Islamic State could establish real, holdable territory outside the Middle East, in Southeast Asia specifically. The defeat at Marawi didn't just end one siege, it answered that question decisively, in front of every extremist movement that had been watching to see if it could be done. It could not. Not here. Not against this. Marawi is still rebuilding today. Years later, entire neighborhoods that existed before May 2017 simply don't exist in the same form anymore. One retired military officer, reflecting on the siege afterward, offered a warning worth remembering, that destruction on this scale doesn't automatically end an ideology. Sometimes it creates the exact conditions that produce the next generation willing to pick it back up. The war ended in one night. What it left behind is still being resolved. Somewhere in Marawi tonight, the rebuilding continues. Slowly, deliberately. 2 names that once commanded international manhunts, $5 million bounties, and 5 months of a nation's full attention are now just historical fact, confirmed by DNA,
closed by 2 shots, fired in the last hour of darkness by men whose names were never released to the public. They didn't do it for recognition. They did it because a city needed its silence back. On October 16, 2017, they gave it that.